I knew something was wrong the moment I saw Brenda Morrison standing in my driveway with her clipboard at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday in October. "Lucas, we need to talk about your upcoming propane delivery," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of artificial sweetness that made my teeth hurt. I was still in my pajamas, coffee mug in hand, and absolutely not prepared for whatever nonsense she was about to unleash. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I had lived in Meadowbrook Estates in Columbus, Ohio for 3 years now, and in that time, I had learned that Brenda, the president of our homeowners association, thrived on making everyone's life miserable. She was in her late 40s, always wore blazers that looked like they came from a catalog for middle management professionals, and had the kind of haircut that screamed, "I need to speak to the manager," before she even opened her mouth. "Well, I've been reviewing the HOA bylaws, and there's a clause about commercial vehicle traffic on residential streets. Your propane company sends those big trucks through here, and honestly, it's become a real concern for many residents." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. "Brenda, I've had propane delivered twice a year for 3 years. It's never been an issue before." She flipped through her clipboard papers, making a show of it. "Yes, well, things change. We're implementing new standards. I'm going to need you to cancel your scheduled refill and work with the HOA to establish approved delivery windows. My tank is at 30%. I have a refill scheduled for next week. That's cutting it close as it is. Then I suggest you work quickly to get HOA approval. The next board meeting isn't until the first week of November." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse. I felt my jaw tighten. "Thanksgiving is November 28th this year. I need that propane for cooking and heating." "Well, Lucas, perhaps you should have thought about that before you scheduled a delivery without HOA approval. Rules are rules." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving me standing there in my driveway, coffee going cold, wondering what fresh hell I had just entered. The next day, I called my propane company, Buckeye Propane Services. They had been delivering to my house since I moved in, and I had never had a single issue. "Hey, this is Lucas Edwards. I've got a delivery scheduled for next Tuesday, October 22nd, and I need to confirm it's still on." "Let me check, Mr. Edwards." There was a pause, some keyboard clicking. "Actually, sir, we received a call yesterday from your HOA requesting we cancel that delivery." My hand tightened around the phone. "They what?" "Yeah, a Brenda Morrison called. Said there was a dispute about commercial vehicles, and that all deliveries needed to be rescheduled through the HOA office. That's not how this works. She doesn't have the authority to cancel my delivery. Sir, we don't like to get in the middle of HOA disputes. We've had issues before where we delivered against HOA wishes and then faced fines. We generally defer to the association on these matters." I spent the next 20 minutes arguing with them, but they were firm. No delivery without HOA clearance. I hung up, fuming, and immediately started digging through my homeowner documents. Surely this was overreach. Surely there was something in the bylaws that protected essential services. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA bylaws were 147 pages of dense legal language. I spent that entire evening reading through them, highlighting relevant sections. There was indeed a clause about commercial vehicle traffic, but it specifically mentioned construction vehicles, moving trucks, and other disruptive commercial activities. Propane delivery trucks made quick stops, usually taking less than 20 minutes. They weren't jackhammering at dawn or blocking streets for hours. I drafted an email to Brenda and the HOA board, citing the specific bylaw sections and explaining why propane delivery should fall under essential services, similar to mail delivery or garbage collection. I kept it professional, included photographs showing how little space the truck took up during deliveries, and provided a schedule showing the delivery would occur during a weekday morning when traffic was minimal. Brenda responded within an hour. Your request has been noted and will be reviewed at the November board meeting. Until then, all propane deliveries are suspended. I called her directly. She didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. I drove to her house, a massive colonial at the end of Sycamore Lane, and knocked on her door. No answer, though I could see her car in the driveway and heard movement inside. This was personal. This was Brenda exercising power for the sake of power. I tried a different approach. I went door to door to my immediate neighbors, asking if the propane truck had ever bothered them. Mrs. Chen, who lived 2 doors down, looked confused. The propane truck. Honey, I barely notice it. It's quieter than the Amazon delivery guy. Mr. Patterson across the street said the same thing. I've got propane delivery too. Are they going after me next? That gave me an idea. I checked the neighborhood and found 4 other homes with propane tanks. I called each of them. All of them had received the same visit from Brenda, though their deliveries weren't scheduled until spring. They weren't immediately impacted, but they were concerned. We should present a united front at the board meeting, said Tom Richardson, who lived on Maple Drive. This is ridiculous. The board meeting was scheduled for November 6th, a week and a half away. My propane tank was still at 30%. I did the math. With normal usage, heating my home, running my tankless water heater, and using my propane range, I would hit empty by mid-November. I could reduce usage, take cold showers, keep the heat lower, but that only bought me a few extra days. I called other propane companies. Every single one of them checked with the HOA before agreeing to deliver. Brenda had apparently sent out a mass notification to all local propane services, stating that Meadowbrook Estates required advance HOA approval for all deliveries. It was a brilliant strategic move on her part, completely locking me out. On November 1st, I received a citation from the HOA. Apparently, my lawn was a 1/4 inch too long according to the maintenance standards. The fine was $200. I had mowed 3 days earlier. I went outside and measured the grass myself. It was well within standards. This was retaliation. I documented everything. Photographs, measurements, timestamps. I sent it all to the HOA board with a formal dispute of the citation. I also sent a certified letter to the board, separate from Brenda, explaining the propane situation and requesting an emergency hearing before November 6th. I got the certified letter back. Only Brenda had signed for it. The other board members, according to the HOA directory, were Susan Kelly, Mark Patterson, and Jennifer Wu. I called each of them directly. Susan answered. She sounded tired. Lucas, I understand your frustration, but Brenda handles the day-to-day operations. She assured us this was a legitimate safety concern. Have you read my emails? Have you seen the documentation I sent? I've been busy with work. I trust Brenda's judgment on these matters. That's why we elected her president. Mark didn't answer his phone. Jennifer did, but she was even less helpful. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this. Take it up at the meeting. The meeting was November 6th. My tank would be dangerously low by then, and even if they approved it, scheduling a new delivery would take time. I consulted with a lawyer, a friend from college named David Tanner, who practiced property law in Cleveland. I drove up to meet him on November 3rd, bringing all my documentation. David reviewed everything carefully, his expression growing increasingly concerned. This is a restraint of trade issue, potentially. She's interfering with your ability to contract with a private company for essential services. The HOA has broad powers, but they're not unlimited. The problem is, fighting this legally takes time and money. You'd need to file an injunction, get a court date, present your case. We're talking weeks, maybe months. I don't have weeks. I need propane. What about space heaters? Electric? My electric panel can't handle running multiple space heaters plus my normal load. I had an electrician assess it when I bought the place. Plus, Thanksgiving is coming. My whole family is coming here. My parents, my sister and her kids, my aunt from Michigan. 15 people. I was planning to roast a turkey in my propane oven, use all the burners for side dishes. I can't do that with a hot plate and a microwave. David drummed his fingers on his desk. Here's what I can do. I can draft a letter to the HOA explaining the legal risks of their position. Sometimes that's enough to scare them straight. But if Brenda is doing this out of spite, it might not matter. Do it. Send it certified, email, regular mail, all of it. The letter went out that afternoon. It was beautifully written, citing case law about HOA overreach, explaining how courts had previously ruled against associations that interfered with essential services, and warning about potential personal liability for board members who acted in bad faith. Brenda's response came the next day. We do not appreciate threats from outside legal counsel. This matter will be resolved at the proper time through proper channels. Any further harassment will result in additional citations. By November 5th, my propane tank was at 12%. I had stopped using hot water for anything but brief showers. The heat was set to 58 degrees. I wore layers inside my own house. I cooked exclusively with my electric kettle and a small toaster oven. The board meeting was held at the community center on the evening of November 6th. I arrived 30 minutes early with a folder full of documents, photographs, and a printed copy of David's legal letter. Tom Richardson and 2 other propane users came with me, though they were far less invested since their tanks were full. Brenda sat at the head table with the other board members, looking supremely confident. About 30 residents filled the chairs, most of them there for other agenda items. When we reached the propane delivery discussion, Brenda gave a presentation that would have made a conspiracy theorist proud. She had printouts of propane truck specifications, highlighted weight limits, and grainy photographs of the truck in the neighborhood that made it look like a military vehicle. These trucks are dangers to our streets, to our children, to our property values, she said, her voice rising with passion. We need to regulate when and how they enter our community. I raised my hand. Brenda, that's the same truck that has delivered safely for years. You're making it sound like a tank convoy. Mr. Edwards, you'll have your turn to speak. When I finally got my turn, I laid out my case methodically. The bylaws, the essential services argument, the lack of any actual complaints from neighbors, the legal risks the board was taking. I showed the photographs proving the truck took minimal space and time. I had Mrs. Chen and Mr. Patterson speak, confirming they had never been bothered. The board deliberated for 15 minutes in a side room. When they came back, Susan Kelly read the decision. The board has decided to table this matter for further research. We'll revisit it at the December meeting. My heart sank. December. My tank is at 12% right now. Brenda actually smiled. Then perhaps you should consider alternative arrangements. The board has spoken. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. This is personal retaliation and you all know it. You're risking legal action because Brenda has a vendetta. Mr. Edwards, you're out of order, Brenda snapped. No, you're out of order. You're abusing your position, and when I sue this HOA, I'm going to make sure everyone knows you were warned. I left the meeting shaking with anger. Tom Richardson caught up with me in the parking lot. That was brutal, man. This is insane. I'm not giving up, I said. There has to be another way. That night, I researched everything I could about HOA disputes, propane delivery alternatives, and legal options. I found cases where homeowners had successfully sued for injunctive relief, but David was right. It took time. I looked into portable propane tanks, the kind you could refill at gas stations, but the volume I needed for heating and cooking was impractical. I would need dozens of tanks, and there was no safe way to store or use that many. On November 7th, my tank hit 8%. I turned off the heat entirely. November in Columbus could be cold, but we hadn't hit freezing yet. I could survive with electric blankets at night and heavy clothing during the day. I called my sister, Victoria Frost, who lived in Detroit. Vic, I might need to cancel Thanksgiving. She was not happy. Lucas, Mom and Dad are driving down from Cleveland. Aunt Martha is flying in from Michigan. The kids have been excited for weeks. What's going on? I explained the whole situation. Victoria had always been protective of me, and I could practically hear her blood pressure rising through the phone. This is insane. Can't you just have them deliver anyway? What's she going to do, arrest you? She'll fine the propane company. They'll refuse to serve me ever again. I'll be blacklisted. Then we'll figure something out. We're not canceling Thanksgiving because some power-hungry witch has a clipboard. On November 10th, I received another citation. Apparently, my porch light was out. It wasn't. I had replaced the bulb the week before, but the citation claimed it violated community lighting standards. Another $200 fine. I took a photograph of the light, clearly illuminated, timestamp visible, and sent it to the board with another formal dispute. I also sent a copy to David, adding it to what was becoming a substantial case file. By November 15th, my tank was at 3%. I had been running on fumes for days, using propane only for brief cooking sessions, eating mostly cold food or food heated in the toaster oven. The house was cold enough that I could see my breath in the mornings. I ran into Brenda at the grocery store. She was loading her cart with Thanksgiving supplies, a massive turkey, all the fixings. She saw me and had the audacity to wave. "How's everything going, Lucas?" I walked over, keeping my voice level despite wanting to scream. "My tank is almost empty, Brenda. I have no heat. I'm 2 weeks from Thanksgiving and I have no way to cook for my family." "That sounds like a personal problem. Maybe you should have followed proper procedures." "There were no procedures until you invented them to target me." She leaned in close, her voice dropping. "You want to know the real reason? Last summer you filed a complaint about my daughter's graduation party. You said the music was too loud. You called the police." I remembered that. It was 2 in the morning on a Tuesday, and the music had been shaking my windows. I had asked them to turn it down twice before calling for a noise complaint. That was a legitimate noise violation. That was my daughter's special day, and you ruined it. She cried because the police showed up. "So yes, Lucas, this is personal. Maybe you'll think twice before bothering your neighbors over minor issues." She walked away, leaving me standing in the canned goods aisle, stunned. This whole thing, the propane, the citations, everything, was revenge for a noise complaint 6 months ago. I immediately called David and told him what she had said. Unfortunately, I hadn't recorded it, so it was my word against hers, but it established motive for harassment. "This helps the case," David said, "but it doesn't solve your immediate problem." On November 20th, my propane tank hit 1%. The system automatically shut off to protect the tank. I was now completely without propane. No heat, no hot water, no range. Thanksgiving was 8 days away. I called Victoria again. "I think we really need to cancel." "Absolutely not." "I'm calling Mom. We're brainstorming." An hour later, Victoria called back. Okay, here's the plan. We're bringing portable electric burners, a turkey roaster, Mom's electric kettle, and Dad's camping stove. We'll make it work. This is happening. You can't cook a Thanksgiving dinner for 15 people on camping equipment. Watch us. Also, I've been doing research. That HOA president of yours is breaking several Ohio regulations regarding HOA governance. I found a state ombudsman office that handles HOA disputes. They won't do anything in time for Thanksgiving. No, but they'll do something. I filed a complaint on your behalf. I listed everything: the retaliation, the interference with services, the vindictive fines, all of it. The week leading up to Thanksgiving was miserable. My house was cold. I was showering at the local gym, and I was eating mostly takeout and cold sandwiches. I received a third citation, this time claiming my mailbox was damaged. It wasn't. I took photographs showing the mailbox in perfect condition. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up at 6 to start preparing what I could with limited resources. The house was freezing, 48 degrees inside. I had set up space heaters in the living room and dining room, hoping to at least make those areas comfortable when everyone arrived at 2. My phone rang at 7:30. It was Tom Richardson. Lucas, dude, you're not going to believe this. Brenda is going door to door looking for propane. Her tank is empty. I sat up straight. What? Yeah, apparently her automatic delivery system screwed up and she didn't notice her gauge. She woke up this morning and has no propane for Thanksgiving. She's literally begging neighbors to help her. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. Almost. I was too cold and too angry to find genuine humor in it. Did anyone help her? Mrs. Chen offered her a hot plate. Brenda about lost her mind. I got dressed and went outside. Sure enough, 3 houses down, I could see Brenda in her driveway, wrapped in a bathrobe, talking frantically on her phone. I walked over, curious despite myself. As I got closer, I could hear her conversation. What do you mean you can't deliver today? It's Thanksgiving. I have 30 people coming. This is unacceptable. She saw me and her face went red, but whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. Having some trouble, Brenda? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She hung up the phone. This is none of your concern. Actually, it's kind of exactly my concern. Propane problems, right? On Thanksgiving? That sounds familiar. Don't start with me, Lucas. This is a simple mix-up with my delivery service. Right. And I'm sure if you had propane, you could just have them deliver it, no problem. Oh wait, you're the one who made that impossible. She glared at me. Are you going to help or just stand there being smug? Why would I help you? You've spent the last 6 weeks making my life hell. You admitted this was revenge. You've literally blocked me from getting the exact thing you now desperately need. Other neighbors were starting to come outside, drawn by the commotion. Tom Richardson arrived, then Mrs. Chen, then Mark Patterson from the HOA board. What's going on? Mark asked. Brenda tried to compose herself. Nothing, just a small delivery issue. I'll have it resolved shortly. She has no propane, I said loudly. She ran out on Thanksgiving morning and can't get a delivery because it's a holiday. Funny thing, propane companies don't deliver on Thanksgiving. Funny thing, if she hadn't blocked my refill schedule in October, I could have helped her, but my tank has been empty for over a week. Mark's expression shifted to understanding, then discomfort. Brenda, is this true? You blocked his propane delivery. It was a legitimate HOA concern about commercial vehicle traffic, she insisted. Mrs. Chen spoke up, her voice sharp. Brenda, I've lived here for 12 years. We've never had problems with propane trucks. What you did to Lucas was cruel and now it's come back on you. That's karma. More neighbors gathered. The story spread quickly. Everyone knew about my HOA troubles, the citations, the board meeting. Now they were seeing the consequences play out in real time. Susan Kelly from the HOA board arrived, still in her pajamas under a coat. "Brenda, what's happening?" "Jennifer just called me saying something about propane." Brenda looked cornered. "Susan, this is being blown out of proportion. I simply need to get a delivery scheduled. On Thanksgiving morning, after you blocked Lucas from getting deliveries." Susan's voice was rising. "Brenda, please tell me that's not what happened." I pulled out my phone and showed Susan the entire email chain, the citations, everything. She read through it, her face growing paler. "Oh my God. Brenda, this is harassment. This is abuse of your position. Why didn't you tell the board the real reason you wanted to block propane deliveries?" "It was a legitimate safety concern." "No, it wasn't. I've been reading the emails Lucas sent. He cited bylaws, provided documentation, and you ignored all of it. And now you're in the same situation you put him in." Jennifer Wu arrived next, and the story had to be explained again. By now, at least 20 neighbors had gathered in Brenda's driveway and the street. It was like a Thanksgiving morning block party, except the host was melting down. Brenda tried to go back inside her house, but Susan stopped her. "We need to talk about this. Now. This is serious, Brenda." "We can discuss this at the next board meeting," Brenda said, her voice icy. "No, we're discussing it now. You've exposed the HOA to legal liability with your personal vendetta. Lucas mentioned a lawyer. Did he send us a legal letter?" I pulled up the email on my phone and showed Susan. She read it, then showed it to Mark and Jennifer. "We never saw this," Mark said. "Brenda, did you hide this from us?" Brenda's silence was answer enough. Susan turned to me. "Lucas, I am so sorry. If we had known the full story, we would have never let this continue. This is going to be resolved today." "How?" I asked. "My tank is empty, hers is empty. No one is delivering on Thanksgiving." Tom Richardson spoke up. "I've got propane. My tank is at 70%. I can spare some." "How do you transfer it?" someone asked. "You don't really, not safely between residential tanks," Tom said, "but I've got a propane adapter kit for my camping equipment. Lucas, if you come over, we can set you up with enough propane cylinders to get through today. It's not a perfect solution, but it's something." Mrs. Chen nodded. "I have an electric roaster you can borrow. My daughter used it for college. It's big enough for a turkey." Other neighbors started offering equipment, space heaters, electric kettles, anything to help. The community was rallying around me, and Brenda was standing in her driveway watching her authority crumble. Susan pulled Brenda aside, and I could hear snippets of their heated conversation. Words like resign and vote of no confidence floated over. I went with Tom to his house, and he helped me load up 5 20-pound propane cylinders, all filled from his recent delivery. He showed me how to connect them to my outdoor grill and set up a safe cooking station. "This should get you through today and tomorrow," he said. "Then we're going to sort out this HOA mess and get you a proper delivery." Back at my house, I set up the propane cylinders and the borrowed equipment. It was a patchwork solution, but it would work. I had heat from the space heaters, cooking capability from the combination of propane, electric roasters, and burners. It wasn't the Thanksgiving I had planned, but it was better than nothing. At noon, Susan Kelly called me. "Lucas, I'm calling an emergency HOA board meeting for tomorrow, November 29th. We're going to officially reverse Brenda's decision on propane deliveries and issue you a formal apology. We're also going to discuss her conduct and position as president. What about the fines she issued?" "All reversed and refunded. I'm writing the checks myself today. I'm also authorizing an immediate exception for propane delivery to your address, effective immediately." I've already called Buckeye Propane Services and explained the situation. They're going to prioritize your delivery for Monday morning. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. This is the least we can do. Brenda overstepped badly and we failed in our oversight. That's on us as a board. My family started arriving at 2. Mom and Dad came first, shocked at the makeshift cooking setup, but impressed that we were making it work. Victoria arrived with her husband and 3 kids, hauling in bags of food and equipment like they were setting up a field kitchen. Aunt Martha flew in from Grand Rapids, took one look at the situation and said, "Well, this is certainly memorable." We cooked Thanksgiving dinner using 3 electric roasters, 2 propane burners from Tom's Camping Gear, my outdoor grill fired up with the borrowed cylinders, and a collection of electric kettles and hot plates. The turkey roasted in 1 electric roaster, stuffing in another, sweet potatoes in a third. We made gravy on the propane burner, baked rolls on the outdoor grill with a makeshift oven setup that Dad engineered, and somehow managed to pull together a complete meal. It was chaotic, unconventional, and completely absurd, but it worked. We ate at 4, squeezed around my dining room table with extra folding tables set up in the living room. The space heaters kept the main areas warm enough, and the food was hot and delicious. During dinner, Victoria stood up with her wine glass. "I want to propose a toast to Lucas, who dealt with an insane HOA situation with patience and dignity, to the neighbors who came together to help, and to karma, which has a wonderful sense of timing." Everyone raised their glasses and we drank to that. "What happened with the HOA lady?" Aunt Martha asked. "Did she ever get her propane?" "Last I heard, no," I said. "She was calling around to companies, but no one delivers on Thanksgiving. She's probably eating cold turkey and takeout." Mom frowned. "That's harsh, even if she deserved it." "She did this to herself," Victoria said. "She could have accepted help from neighbors, but her pride wouldn't let her." The emergency board meeting happened the next day at 10 in the morning. I attended with David, who had driven down from Cleveland specifically for this. The entire board was there: Susan, Mark, Jennifer, and Brenda, though Brenda looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Susan called the meeting to order and immediately addressed the propane situation. "This board needs to acknowledge a serious failure of governance. President Morrison implemented a policy blocking propane deliveries to Mr. Edwards' residence without full board approval or proper justification. She then failed to disclose legal communications to the board and issued retaliatory fines based on fabricated violations. This behavior is unacceptable and potentially exposes the HOA to significant legal liability." Mark Patterson nodded. "I've reviewed all the documentation Mr. Edwards provided, including the legal letter from his counsel. We have no defensible position here. The propane delivery policy was improperly implemented and appears to have been motivated by personal animus." Brenda tried to defend herself. "I was acting in what I believed were the community's best interests." "You admitted to Mr. Edwards that this was retaliation for a noise complaint," Susan said sharply. "That's abuse of your position, Brenda. That's not leadership, that's revenge." Jennifer Wu spoke up. "I move that we officially rescind any policies regarding propane delivery restrictions, reverse all fines issued to Mr. Edwards, and issue a formal apology." "Seconded," Mark said. The vote was unanimous. Even Brenda voted in favor, probably sensing she had no choice. "Furthermore," Susan continued, "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in President Morrison's leadership. Her conduct in this matter has been inappropriate and damaging to the HOA's reputation and legal standing." Brenda stood up. "You can't do this." "Actually, we can. It's in the HOA charter. A majority of the board can remove an officer for cause, and this definitely qualifies as cause. David leaned over and whispered, "This is going better than I expected." The vote happened. 3 in favor of removing Brenda, 1 abstention from Brenda herself. She was out as president, effective immediately. "I quit the board entirely then," Brenda said, gathering her papers. "You're all going to regret this." "I think we'll manage," Susan said dryly. After Brenda left, Susan turned to me. "Mr. Edwards, on behalf of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, I want to apologize formally for the treatment you received. Your fines are reversed, your propane delivery is approved, and we're going to review our policies to ensure this kind of abuse doesn't happen again." "I appreciate that," I said. "I also want to make sure this doesn't happen to other homeowners. The HOA has broad powers, and if they're not checked, someone else will abuse them." "Agreed. We're going to implement a new appeals process and require full board approval for any policy that restricts essential services." David spoke up. "I'd like to propose that my client be reimbursed for his legal expenses and any costs incurred due to the propane situation, including the gym membership he bought to have access to hot showers." Susan nodded. "We'll need to review the amounts, but yes, that's reasonable. Send us an itemized list, and we'll process it." The meeting ended 30 minutes later. I walked out feeling like a weight had been lifted. It wasn't a total victory. I had still suffered through weeks of cold showers and no heat, and Thanksgiving had been a logistical nightmare. But justice had been served. On Monday, December 2nd, Buckeye Propane Services delivered a full tank refill to my house. The driver, a guy named Ray who had been making my deliveries for years, grinned when he saw me. "Heard you had quite the adventure with your HOA. You have no idea. Well, you're all set now. Full tank should last you through the winter easy." That evening, I turned my heat up to a comfortable 68 degrees for the first time in weeks. I took a long, hot shower in my own bathroom. I cooked dinner on my propane range, all 4 burners going at once, just because I could. It felt like luxury. Tom Richardson called later that week. "Hey, the HOA board wants to have a neighborhood meeting to discuss the new policies. They're asking for input from all the propane users. You interested in presenting?" "Absolutely." The meeting happened on December 10th. About 50 residents showed up, a much bigger turnout than the typical board meeting. Susan Kelly ran it, and she was clearly trying to rebuild trust. "We're here to discuss essential services policies and how the HOA should handle them going forward. We had a situation recently that highlighted how our current structure can be abused. We want to prevent that from happening again." I presented my thoughts, keeping it constructive. I suggested that essential services like propane, heating oil, and utilities should be exempt from HOA approval processes. I proposed a clearer definition of what constitutes a commercial vehicle violation versus a service vehicle. I recommended a transparent appeals process where homeowners could challenge fines before they went into effect. Other residents added their input. Mrs. Chen suggested term limits for board positions to prevent power consolidation. Mark Patterson proposed requiring board decisions to be documented with full reasoning, creating a paper trail that would discourage arbitrary enforcement. By the end of the meeting, we had a framework for new policies that would protect homeowners while still giving the HOA necessary oversight powers. Susan promised to draft new bylaws incorporating these suggestions and put them to a community vote. On December 15th, I received a formal letter from the Ohio HOA Ombudsman's office. Victoria's complaint had triggered an investigation into the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. They wanted to interview me about the propane situation and the pattern of retaliatory fines. I met with an investigator named Robert Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, on December 18th. He took detailed notes about everything, from the initial confrontation with Brenda to the Thanksgiving disaster to the emergency board meeting. "This is a clear case of HOA governance abuse," Robert said. "We see this more often than you'd think. Someone gets a little power and it goes to their head. The good news is that your HOA board took corrective action quickly once they understood what was happening. That counts in their favor. What happens now? We'll issue a report with findings and recommendations. The HOA will need to implement policy changes and provide evidence of compliance. If they don't, they could face state sanctions, including fines and mandatory oversight. And Brenda, that's trickier. She's no longer on the board, so she's outside our jurisdiction in terms of HOA governance. However, if you wanted to pursue civil action against her personally for the harassment and damages, you'd have a strong case." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to sue her, to make sure she faced real consequences for what she had done. But another part of me just wanted to move on, to enjoy my house and my life without the constant stress. "I'll think about it," I told Robert. Christmas came and went. The new HOA policies passed with overwhelming community support. Susan Kelly was elected as the new president, running on a platform of transparency and accountability. Jennifer Wu took over as vice president. They recruited 2 new board members from the community, both of them reasonable people who had no interest in power trips. On January 10th, I received a check from the HOA for $1,200. It covered my legal expenses, gym membership, the citations that had been issued, and compensation for the hassle. It also included a formal apology letter signed by all 4 board members. I ran into Brenda once more in late January at the same grocery store where she had admitted to her revenge plot. She was in the frozen food section, and when she saw me, she actually looked ashamed. "Lucas," she said quietly, "Brenda, I owe you an apology. What I did was wrong. I let my emotions get the better of me and I abused my position. I'm sorry." I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity, but she seemed genuine. "I appreciate that," I said. "It was a rough few months. I know. I've been thinking about it a lot. I've actually been seeing a therapist, working on my control issues. My husband said I needed to make things right with you. Consider it done. I'm not holding a grudge. Thank you. That means a lot." She walked away and I felt something release in my chest. I hadn't realized how much anger I had been carrying until that moment. Life in Meadowbrook Estates settled into a new normal. The HOA functioned smoothly under Susan's leadership. Propane deliveries happened without incident. The citations stopped, the petty enforcement disappeared, and the neighborhood actually felt like a community again. In March, Tom Richardson hosted a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the first nice weather of spring. About 30 people showed up, including most of the HOA board. We grilled burgers and hot dogs. Kids ran around playing, and people actually seemed to be enjoying living there. Susan pulled me aside at one point. "I wanted to thank you again for how you handled everything. You could have sued us into oblivion, but instead you worked with us to fix the problems. That says a lot about your character." "I just wanted to be able to live in my house without drama," I said. "That's all any of us want." "Well, you've got it now, and if anyone tries to pull something like that again, we've got policies in place to stop it." As spring turned to summer, I found myself actually enjoying the HOA. The new board organized community events that were genuinely fun, not mandatory participation nightmares. They maintained the common areas well, enforced reasonable standards fairly, and stayed out of people's business otherwise. It was what an HOA should be. In June, I received notice that my propane delivery was scheduled for the following week. I confirmed it without a second thought. No anxiety, no worries. The truck arrived on schedule. Ray, the driver, filled my tank, and that was that. It was gloriously boring and exactly how it should have been all along. Looking back on the whole experience, I learned a lot about HOAs, about community dynamics, and about standing up for yourself when someone abuses their power. I learned that most people are reasonable if you give them the facts, and that communities can self-correct when they see injustice happening. I also learned to document everything, to keep records, and to not be afraid of getting lawyers involved when necessary. David's legal letter, combined with Victoria's complaint to the state, had been crucial in forcing the HOA to take the situation seriously. Most importantly, I learned that karma is real. Brenda's empty propane tank on Thanksgiving morning was the perfect poetic justice for what she had done to me. She experienced firsthand the consequences of her actions, and it changed her perspective completely. The following Thanksgiving, I hosted again. This time, everything worked perfectly. My propane tank was full, my oven worked flawlessly, and I cooked a traditional turkey dinner without any improvised equipment or borrowed supplies. The whole family came again, and we laughed about the previous year's chaos while being grateful for the normalcy. As we sat around the table, Victoria raised her glass for another toast. To Lucas, who survived HOA hell and came out the other side, to boring propane deliveries and functional governance, and to never taking hot showers and warm houses for granted. We drank to that, and I felt genuinely thankful. Not just for the propane and the heat, but for the community that had rallied around me, for the board that had corrected its course, and for the simple ability to live peacefully in my own home. The whole experience had been terrible while it was happening, but in retrospect, it had made Meadowbrook Estates a better place to live. The new policies protected everyone. The board was accountable. The community was stronger. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal problems that need fixing, and our crisis had done exactly that. By the time winter rolled around again, I had been living in Meadowbrook Estates for 4 years. My propane tank was full, my heat worked perfectly, and the HOA sent me a holiday card thanking me for my contributions to improving the community. It was a far cry from the nightmare of the previous November. I never did sue Brenda personally. The apology she offered in the grocery store felt genuine, and pursuing legal action would have just dragged things out longer. Besides, losing her position on the board and facing community backlash was probably punishment enough. I heard through the neighborhood gossip that she and her husband were considering moving, though nothing had come of it yet. In February, the neighborhood held elections for 2 open board positions. I was asked to run, but I declined. I had no interest in being part of HOA governance. I just wanted it to work properly. Tom Richardson ran and won, which I thought was perfect. He was level-headed, fair-minded, and had been instrumental in helping me during the crisis. Life continued peacefully through the spring and into the following summer. My propane deliveries happened like clockwork, twice a year, no issues, no drama. The truck came, Ray filled the tank, I signed the receipt, and that was that. It was beautifully mundane. The whole experience taught me that homeowners associations are only as good as the people running them. When you get someone like Brenda, who lets personal grudges and power trips dictate their decisions, it can make life miserable for everyone. But when you get reasonable people who genuinely want to serve the community, an HOA can actually enhance the neighborhood. It also taught me the importance of community solidarity. When my neighbors saw what was happening and rallied to help, it made all the difference. Tom lending me propane cylinders, Mrs. Chen offering equipment, the other residents showing up to support me at meetings, all of that mattered. No one should have to fight an HOA alone, and thankfully, I didn't have to. As I sit here now, warm house, full propane tank, no HOA drama, I can appreciate how far we have all come. Meadowbrook Estates is a genuinely nice place to live now. The HOA functions as it should, protecting property values and maintaining standards without overreaching into people's lives. The neighborhood feels like a community, not a dictatorship. And every time I see that propane truck pull up to my house, I feel a little surge of satisfaction. It's a reminder of what I fought for and won, the simple right to access essential services without arbitrary interference. It's a reminder that standing up to abuse of power matters, even when it is exhausting and frustrating. Brenda taught me an important lesson, though probably not the one she intended. She showed me that petty tyranny can happen anywhere, even in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio. But she also showed me, inadvertently, that communities can reject that tyranny when they see it clearly. Her downfall was swift once the other board members and neighbors understood what was really happening. The state ombudsman's report came out in March, praising the HOA for its corrective actions, but criticizing the previous governance structure that had allowed the abuse to occur. The report became a case study used in Ohio HOA training programs, an example of what not to do and how to fix it when things go wrong. I sometimes wonder if Brenda reads those case studies and recognizes her own story, her own mistakes. I hope she does. I hope she learned from the experience as much as I did, just different lessons. As summer approaches again, I am preparing for another family gathering. This time it is just a casual cookout, nothing as elaborate as Thanksgiving, but I am looking forward to it. I will fire up my propane grill, cook burgers and brats, and enjoy a normal summer day with my family. Victoria has already called to confirm she is coming, and she couldn't resist teasing me. Should I bring backup electric burners just in case? Very funny. Everything is fine now. I know. I am just glad you don't have to deal with that nightmare anymore. Me too. Life in an HOA does not have to be a horror story. It took a crisis to prove that, but it is true. With the right people in charge, clear policies, and a community willing to hold leaders accountable, it can actually work well. Meadowbrook Estates is proof of that, and every time my propane tank gets refilled without incident, I am reminded of that proof. It is a small thing, really, just a truck showing up to deliver fuel. But it represents so much more: freedom from harassment, protection from abuse of power, and the right to live peacefully in your own home. That is what I fought for during those miserable weeks in October and November. That is what the community rallied to protect. And that is what we all enjoy now, a neighborhood where the HOA serves the residents, not the other way around. So here is to boring propane deliveries, functional governance, and the power of community solidarity. Here is to standing up to petty tyrants and winning. And here is to hot showers, warm houses, and the simple pleasure of cooking Thanksgiving dinner without needing camping equipment and borrowed cylinders. I survived HOA hell, and I came out stronger for it. Meadowbrook Estates did too. And that, more than anything else, is what I am grateful for as I look back on the whole absurd, frustrating, ultimately vindicating experience. Sometimes the worst situations lead to the best outcomes, and this was definitely one of those times.